If you're new and you want to follow along for more, like, sub, bell. Hello, this is Puddle, welcome back. Last week I released a video of all sorts of dumb stuff that I believed growing up, and in it I mentioned a handful of things that were needlessly terrifying to me, like driving over bridges because I thought they were collapsing every time that we drove over them. If you followed for a while, you already knew I grew up agoraphobic, which that's something I'd been working on and getting through over the last couple of years, and I'm pretty proud of myself for it too, but go figure, I spent almost all of 2020 in my home again after mandatory lockdown because of the you-know-what. But yeah, I mentioned the agoraphobia thing to really hammer it in. I was a very anxious child who was growing into a very anxious adult, and even in the safety of my own home, there was always something ridiculous there to scare me. Like my folks assuming that I was mature enough to see some horror flicks, which I clearly wasn't. I only saw a handful as a kid, but they managed to mess me up for a while. I saw the American adaptation of The Ring when it came out, and that was a doozy. I saw Ginger Snaps 2 with my mom, which did not make me fear werewolves, but it definitely left its impact. And that same weekend my mom rented Ginger Snaps 2, she also put on another rented title before falling asleep, assuming that I wouldn't be paying attention to it. I did. And if you're curious, it was Cabin by the Lake. You know, a movie where a guy kidnaps women, tortures them, and drowns them at the bottom of a lake, where they see all of the other drowned bodies while they're actively drowning. That was a lot for a child to watch. But that same week we were moving. We didn't have cable, and I was exhausted. I had nightmares from seeing Cabin by the Lake, and I ended up falling asleep on the living room floor while my folks were loading furniture out, and I woke up with the TV on, playing a staticky episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which I would have loved to give a chance years later. I've heard it's a very good show, but the episode snippet I saw in my groggy, already scared headspace was a scene of a character being buried alive. Woohoo! New things to be afraid of! But the most lingering damage from horror flicks, I gotta admit to, I mentioned last week, one of the misconceptions I had about the world was about dolls. The first horror movie I ever saw was a Chucky movie. Of course the hit movie series meant merchandise opportunities, but little baby me just couldn't understand why people were making Chucky dolls and selling them, because baby me truly thought every single Chucky doll was alive and evil, and my father, the absolute dick, owned 3. You might be able to tell I'm not fond of the guy. These videos, even the one that you're watching right now, here, hi, these are personal, and I love having a way to be open and creative in a space where I can share my experiences and stories in a fun little way that encourages others to share their own as well, because I like reading what you guys write in the comments. So for that reason, I try to avoid bummers and bummer topics, but I will be blunt here and say that even if I didn't know better as a naive kid who wanted to find the goodness in everything and everyone, my father was a total dick the entire time I knew him. And one of the earliest ways I can remember losing trust for the douche canoe was when he started hiding Chucky dolls around the house. Knowing that it would send me into crying hysterics every time, one peeked out from his van window meant to discourage my older half-sister and her friends from hanging out inside the RV in the driveway, but of course she didn't care, it's just a doll. But me, it meant every time I got into the van I would start crying unless he put it away, and he didn't want to put it away. So, hidden in the pantry, hidden in the blankets on the couch, hidden behind the couch, hidden in my bed, under the covers, more than once. I'd hear stepping around at night, and when I'd ask about it, I would be told, well, it's probably Chucky looking for you. Cue me bawling my eyes out, scared he was gonna come get me. And when my parents split up and I moved in with other relatives, you'd think that I'd be free from that panic. But that fear carried over, unsurprisingly, to all dolls. And the relatives who had guardianship over me had these collectible porcelain dolls, little powder white dolls with realistic, carefully styled hair and glass eyes and expensive dresses and winter coats. In bedrooms, hallways, and common areas like the living room, there was always at least one doll guarding each space, often more behind glass displays, and of course every time that I was in a room with one, I felt it watching me. I felt multiple watching me. Like when I wasn't looking, their heads would turn and follow me. I didn't like going out into the halls at night or into the kitchen because the very idea of seeing them missing from the shelves gave me a panic attack. I'd have nightmares that they were surrounding my bed, because if Chucky could, any doll could. And my relatives would mock me for sobbing and begging that the gift dolls I received would be kept in storage bins and not on my bedroom shelves. And if you're like, wait, you didn't even play with them? Then you don't understand. These were not dolls for kids, at all. These were expensive, stupid collectibles that weren't supposed to even be touched by me. Midway shout out to all the stars in my Patreon constellation and viewers like you. Thank you. And if you're new, hi. I got tons of videos and a mailing list with all of my projects if you want to check them out. If you're a longtime viewer, you might remember a video I made in, 2016, rough year. Dang. Anyway, I made a video with terrible microphone and webcam quality titled Top 5 Things in Games That Terrified Me as a Kid, Even Though They Don't Really Make Sense. Yeah, it was a mouthful, which has long since been deleted because dysphoria is a trip, baby. But we're gonna recover some old territory here today because, let's be real, I didn't go out because I wasn't allowed and I was too terrified to try, and I needed some sort of escapism other than drawing dogs, so I would turn to video games. But, my relatives were picky and worried about Satan to a suffocating degree, so I only really got to play what was approved, and yet I still got spooked by pretty ridiculous stuff. Like, playing my sister's copy of Pokemon Yellow before I knew how to read, I didn't know what critical meant, but when I saw it, the game made a sharp, powerful noise and health bars would quickly zip down lower, so it had to be a good thing, right? Well, early game, Viridian Forest, you might know where I'm going with this, lots of possibilities for your Pokemon to get debilitating status effects. And I couldn't read, but I could tell when your Pokemon fainted that something bad was happening. And I felt so bad when they fainted from battles. But back in Gen 1, if your Pokemon got poisoned, they'd keep taking damage as you stepped forward until they fainted. And the screen and audio would seemingly bug out, and I would get so anxious and scared that the Pokemon in this game cartridge were feeling real pain. And I remember panicking because I couldn't even read. I didn't know what was happening. But stepping anywhere could make things worse, and oh no, my friends all died, and now the screen went black. Oh no! I also got mega scared by events in The Sims. The stuff lots of people love to jump to for fun, like making Sims just to put them in a pool without a ladder, or setting a house on fire. I could not handle that stuff. I felt too bad for them. And when the event music played, especially for burglaries, I was terrified. It sucked. Your sim would never wake up in time fast enough to handle any situation, so you'd try to get the burglar arrested only to have a pig show up an hour later after all of your stuff had already been taken, and then you'd get charged and fined for calling for help in the first place. No, The Sims did not radicalize me. But it could have. I also played a dog sim on the PS2, Dog's Life. One hell of a weird game that still means a lot to me, even if it is mostly doo-doo humor. I never beat the game because the last level is literally spoilers for a game that came out in 2003. The last level is dog hell. A bunch of the dogs you met in the game are in cages and you have to get them out while being chased, and the sky is red, and you know by this point that everyone is going to get ground up into cat food if you fail. And those stakes were too high for me. I never beat the game. And right before this level, you're in the city, which, just straight up, if you're not fast enough in one section, you get shot. Are you kidding me? And I could get into how Rugrats The Search for Reptar even scared me. Lots of little sections that were too hard or spooky to get through on my own. Even Ice Cream Mountain, the mini-golf game, was not safe. There was a Mr. Friend mummy inside clicking and whirring, and you didn't even have a health bar. He couldn't hurt you. But I always got so scared getting lost in that little pyramid maze. Hearing those clicks. It didn't even matter that he couldn't hurt me. He still scared me. But this is the same kid who cried over a CD-ROM dollhouse game in the 90s because the stove yelled at them.
Don't touch me. I'm very, very hot.
Games with no intention of scaring me managed to freak me out the most, because it felt the most insidious, One old game, Detective Barbie and the Carnival Caper, was a doozy. I mean, don't get me wrong, aesthetically it's a really neat little game, but the creepy music mixed with the fact that someone was walking around the park with you late at night, kidnapping people? When you go on rides by yourself, you might see them running around. That's scary. Really scary. And that's not even accounting for the models in the game, because that's true fear. After all, the game's theming was, again, kidnapping. And it had this area that you had to explore, a magician's stage and a dressing room. Backstage was creepy too, I was totally scared of magicians, okay? I know, Dakota Puddle, let's demystify magic star over here, fully admitting to a fear of magicians. But who could blame me when I grew up with all of these little baby games mixed together with my father's original 7-disc copy of Phantasmagoria, an FMV horror game that I was, for whatever reason, allowed to play. There was a save file that had all the flags already marked, which meant a bunch of the cutscenes wouldn't play the scary stuff because those cutscenes had already been triggered, so I would just wander around this big house and not understand what to do. But once, I loaded the wrong save file and saw people get murdered by a scary magician. And also saw specific little scary cutscenes that years later would inspire me to delve deeper into the psychology of fear and what our brains do with that fear. And it's really cool. And it totally explains why Ginger Snaps 2 definitely left me with some trauma, but, also definitely left me with a werewolf-shaped hole in my heart. If you liked this and you haven't subbed yet, please do so, and maybe check out my other story vids or project guides.
Hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, don't disappear for too long.
Oh, Ken.
That was horrible.